It is now my pleasure to turn today's program over to Kelly Marino. Kelly, the floor is yours.
Hello, my name is Kelly, and today we will discuss the Modified Duty and Return to Work program during our webinar. Today, during the webinar, we plan to provide an overview of how to implement the program, benefits for both the employee and employer, and much more. We have found that providing a return to work program allows the injured employee to return to work quicker and still stay involved in the company. The Bureau of Labor Statistics finds that if an injured employee is out of work for 6 months, they have a 50% chance of returning to work. If they are out for 1 year, they have a 25% chance of returning to work. And if they are out for 2 or more years, they have a 0% chance of returning. By implementing a modified duty return to work program to your employees, we hope it will cut down the percent of employees that may not return to work and instead provide them the opportunity to return to work sooner and provide cost benefits to the company as well. I am now going to turn it over to Scott Hunter to begin discussing the details of implementing a modified duty return to work program.
Thank you, Kelly. As Kelly stated, a couple of the things that we're going to talk about today, we're going to use a couple of different terms. We're going to talk about modified duty. We're going to talk about alternate duty and what the differences between those two are. We're going to talk about some of the steps involved with implementing a return to work program. And then we're going to talk about some of the benefits to both the employee and the employer. And then when we get down to the end, we'll touch on a couple of different topics that hopefully can help you prevent employees from getting injured so that we don't have to use a return to work program. Just to get started, let's talk a little bit about modified duty first. Modified duty is basically just a temporary work assignment. An employee has been injured or an on-the-job injury or illness, and they've been released back to work with some restrictions. So what we do at that point is we look at their normal job duties, the job duties they had before they were injured, and we see if there's a way that we can modify their normal job activities to put them back at work in a modified capacity. This allows the employees to earn pay and also still be able to be involved and still work while they're going through the recovery process. We talk about the restrictions and some of the restrictions that they may be released back to work with. It could be any number of things depending on the nature of the injury. Just some examples, there may be some lifting restrictions, for 4 weeks, no more lifting no more than 10 pounds. There could be some restrictions that say they can't stand but so many hours a day or sit for so many hours at a time. There could even be restrictions on the number of hours that the doctor is going to allow them to work. So we have to look at all of those things, and if we can modify their normal job duties, that's kind of the first step that we'll take. One thing you have to remember, modified duty is a temporary solution, and we use that temporary solution to keep the employee involved and in some type of normal routine so that they still feel involved with the company and they're not at home on the couch. We understand that from time to time, people, once they're at home, they start to kind of enjoy it. They can adjust to making 66 2/3 of their average weekly wage. The other thing we want to do is to get them out from in front of the TV in the middle of the day when they're sitting at home with an injury, because if you've turned the TV on during the middle of the day, pretty much every other commercial starts out with an attorney asking, have you been hurt at work? Have you been injured on the job? So that's some of the things that we try to keep in mind. We'll get to alternate duty here shortly, but let's talk about some of the steps to implementing a successful return to work program. The first step is you're going to have to get commitment and involvement from upper management. Again, this is with any part of your safety program. For it to be successful, you have to have the commitment of upper management. The second step is to design a written policy for the return to work program. Some of the options to include in this include the company's commitment to encouraging employees to return back to work quickly after an injury. Spell about the negative consequences to lost time incidents. Reduction or loss in wages, possibly depending on how extended the lost time is, a possible loss of medical coverage. There is that gap there, the communication gap between the injured employee and the employer, where they start to feel isolated because you don't have that daily contact with lost time. Modified duty extends only for a specific number of weeks or when the employee reaches MMI or maximum medical improvement, and that's when the doctor deems that that particular injury or illness has gotten to a point where it's recovered as far as it's going to. The third step in getting ready to implement a successful return to work program is take time to review any of your previous on-the-job injuries or illnesses. That way you have a good understanding of what types of incidents that you're dealing with. Something else that this review can do is it helps you in determine normal functions of your operation that may need to be targeted or modified in ways to reduce incidents. It may be a specific function that we need to target from a safety or a training standpoint. The fourth step is to perform job analysis on each function that you have in your organization. This is going to require a lot of additional involvement from supervisors, from employees who perform some of these job tasks. You're going to need to get some outside input. Ensure that the essential functions of each job duty are well defined. Part of that reason is to help you when that injured employee goes to the doctor and restrictions are placed on him by the doctor. If you've got well-defined job descriptions, that helps the doctor when it comes to making determinations on that injured or that injured employee's restrictions. The fifth step is to develop a list of modified or alternate duties. You can talk to some of your current employees, find out what are some things that they would do if they had more time. Again, with this you want to involve managers and supervisors as well. Establish a relationship with your designated medical provider. This is very important. Discuss your return to work program with them. Involve them in any capacity that you can in helping to develop it. One thing that's real important is having your medical provider come out to your facility. Take them on a tour. Let them go around and see some of the different job functions that are going on. Let them get an understanding of what your employees are doing, and this will in return help the doctor when it comes time to start setting restrictions. It also will help him when an injured employee comes in and the injured worker is trying to explain to him what happened and why he's hurt. The doctor has a better understanding of the job task that he's performing. Step 8, you want to allow the physician to effectively communicate any restrictions. Have the restrictions documented for the supervisor and the manager of the injured employees. Have the injured worker provide a completed evaluation form at each visit. And that form in particular is helpful in determining if the modified duties are realistic for that particular employee and the injury or illness that he or she is dealing with. You're going to need to develop a form that you'll provide to the injured employee. This is going to define the assignment that's temporary and what the employer is expecting out of them from a light duty standpoint and how long they expect this light duty to last. Some of the things that you're going to want to include in this form when you develop it, and there's a list here to look at, the start date of the modified position or the alternate duty. How many hours is the employee going to work? The name and title of the person to which that employee is going to report to. The deadline for the injured employee to accept the modified duty. 7 days is typically customary for them to decide whether they're going to accept the modified duty or not. You're going to want to include the name and contact person that's responsible for any questions. A space for the employee's printed name, signature, and date. A box that they can check so that they can signify whether they're accepting or refusing the modified duty. And then a statement that informs the injured employee that if they decline the temporary position, they may become disqualified for workers' comp benefits. Now, in the state of Alabama, we're only allowed to deny the indemnity portion of the claim. We're going to pay the medical regardless, but if an employee refuses light duty, we are able to deny the indemnity portion of the claim. Again, the 10th step in developing this return to work program, you want to designate a return to work coordinator, and that's probably going to be somebody in an HR type function, and that's going to be your point of contact for all work related and non-work related injured employees who may need modified duty. The 11th step is to have your designated medical provider or the attending physician provide you an updated assessment after each visit for the injured worker. This is going to allow you and the physician to understand if these modified duties are acceptable, and there may be changes that have to be made to the modified duty along the way, so this assessment is going to give you a clearer understanding of that. The 12th step is to communicate the program. For the program to be successful, everyone within the organization is going to have a clear understanding of what's accepted, or what is going to be accepted and what's expected, I should say. You're going to have to make sure all employees and all members of management understand what do we expect from the employee that we're placing on light duty. What are we expecting from the management team and how they manage that employee. Once the program's in place, a good communication between the employer, the employee, your workers' comp carrier, and your designated medical provider or the attending physician is not optional. It's something that really, for it to be successful, you have to do. With no communication between the people necessary, the program is not going to be successful. When we talk about making our employees aware of the program and making sure that all expectations are understood, you want to do a couple of things. The biggest thing, especially if you're a company and you're implementing a new return to work program, set a date that you can sit your employees down and explain the program to them. Make sure they have a good understanding of how it's going to work. You want to review a couple of different things with them. You want to describe the program. Let them know when it's going to become effective. Explain to them some of the benefits. There's going to be benefits for them as well as benefits for you as the employer, and we'll talk about some of those in a later slide. Make sure they understand who your designated medical provider is, as well as the company liaison to the medical provider, and that's probably going to be the same person that you have being that light duty coordinator. You want to have a written description or written job duties of all the current jobs like we talked about earlier. Also, provide a written list of modified job duties as well as alternate job duties. Some of it could be related to some administrative type work, filing, handling mail, having an extra person to answer the phone, all of those as long as we're working them in those restrictions. There's some safety-related tasks that you can add in there, safety inspections, checking fire extinguishers, updating safety data sheets. I know a lot of times, I've saw trucking companies in the past where some of these larger companies have a safety lane, and when the truck comes through, there's a checklist that has to be checked off on that truck, and if somebody's on light duty, that's their job. They sit out there in that safety lane with the checklist, and as the truck rolls through the safety lane, they check off all the items, and that provides somebody with a light duty job. You want to make sure everybody has copies of the written program. Make sure they have copies of all pertinent forms like the medical evaluation form and any additional forms that you develop with this return to work program. You want to make sure everybody has copies of that. How long is the modified duty going to last? Well, there's a lot of factors in there that determine how far we need to go with it. Of course, it's going to end on the earliest of any of these, the date that the employee is released with no restrictions by their physician, in writing, obviously. the date that the physician concludes that the employee has permanent restrictions. Well, then we've got decisions to make there. Can they continue performing their normal job task under these modified restrictions? Possibly. That's just something that you kind of have to make when you get to that point. That's a decision that has to be made at that point. The date that the maximum assignment period ends. For full-time employees cannot last more than a cumulative period exceeding 1,560 work hours, including any hours charged to overtime. For part-time benefited employees cannot last more than a cumulative period equivalent to the hours normally scheduled in a 39-hour work week period. And then part-time non-benefit and temporary employees that cannot last for a cumulative period exceeding the lesser of one of the employee's assignments for 290 calendar days, or the date that the employee fails to take a required medical examination with good reason. At the end of the modified duty period, if the employee cannot return to work without restrictions, again, that's a decision you have to make at that point, but you would have to place them on the appropriate leave, or you make the determination that we can continue to move forward under these modified job task. When we get ready to implement the program, here's where we're at that point. An employee's been injured. They've suffered an on-the-job illness, some type of an event, and it looks like we're going to have a lost time incident. The employee's been released by the medical provider to return to work, but with restrictions. So now we're going to put the program to work. We're going to review the evaluation from the physician, see what their recommendations or their restrictions are. We're going to make sure that we have a good understanding of that employee's restrictions, because the last thing we want to do is accidentally work them outside of their restrictions and make their injury worse or cause another injury because we've worked them outside of those restrictions. Review the employee's normal job functions, and we're going to see if we can modify those, like we talked about earlier, to keep them within their normal job, just with modified duty. If we can do that, then we instruct the injured employees on this and continue with the return to work program if it's implemented. If we can't modify their normal job tasks, then we need to determine if there's alternate work that can be performed within these restrictions. Now, we talked about what modified duty was, where that's basically we're taking their normal job functions and we're tweaking some stuff here and there to stay within those restrictions. What is alternate duty? Well, alternate duty is just other opportunities outside of the injured employee's position that will continue to keep them working within those restrictions. Something really important to keep in mind with alternate duty, it cannot be degrading, meaningless work. It really needs to be work that serves a purpose. And if possible, you want to try to make that alternate duty something that supports the company's overall productivity, and that may require a little thinking outside of the box, but if you sit down and look at the overall big picture, a lot of times you can come up with ways where we can find some type of alternate duty that affects the company in a positive way. Also, you want to make sure that the work doesn't feel like punishment. This also helps keep the program within compliance among the other employees. What you want to make sure that you do is keep anger or resentment at a minimum, especially when we're dealing with an on-the-job injury, because a lot of people already have so many outside influences in their ear trying to steer them toward an attorney when they've been injured on the job. We want to keep it as low-key as possible. And if the work's meaningful, this is going to give an injured employee a sense of accomplishment as well, because they still feel involved. They still feel like they're getting some work done, and it's just overall better for the morale. How do we determine what alternate duty is available? Well, we kind of go through some of the same steps that we did with the modified duty. We'll schedule a meeting with management, discuss ideas and viable options. In a small setting, again, you may even include some of your employees. We'll explain the purpose of the meeting. What are we looking to get out of this? Well, the main thing we're looking to achieve is to find out what are some alternate duties that can take place that we can work an employee within these restrictions, but it still be meaningful employment. Make it a brainstorming session. If you've got a whiteboard or something like that, just jot ideas down so everybody can see it and let everybody put their heads together and come up with different ideas. Discuss each viable suggestion and try to review the pros and the cons from each one. Share the list of the alternate duties with your designated medical provider. Let them take a look at them, and they may even can offer you some insight on what are good and what are bad ideas. And then review the duties periodically and expand on them or adjust them as needed. Some of the benefits to the employee, if you're able to put them on some type of light duty or alternate duty, it does help to increase the morale of the employee. Again, they're still involved. They don't feel detached from the company. It also assists with the recovery of the injured worker. It can help reduce the financial impact on the injured worker. And it, again, like we've said a couple of different times earlier, it helps for their self-esteem because, again, they're involved. They still feel like part of the team. Some of the benefits to you, the employer, obviously it's going to help to prevent extended lost time, savings on the cost of retraining or replacing an injured worker, a reduction in the overall cost of the claim. Lost time or the indemnity portion of the claim a lot of times is a big expense related to workers' comp claims. So this alternate or light duty can help kind of cut some of that expense out. It helps prevent malingerers and bogus claims because they know, well, we're not going to get to go sit at home. They're going to find something for us to do, so it's not going to be a vacation paid at 66 2/3 of the average weekly wage. Again, it prevents the loss of contact with your injured employees. That's one we can't stress enough because a lot of times when you talk to an employee who has been out of work for an extended period of time due to an on-the-job injury, one of their biggest complaints is, I don't hear from anybody from the company, or I don't hear from them very often. Nobody's called to check on me. So that kind of adds to some of the resentment in that aspect. And again, like we said above, it sends that message that the injury is just not going to be automatic time off. If you're able, we're going to find something here for you to do. A couple other things just to kind of go back through what we said. You want to set the program up before it's needed. Don't wait till you get into a position where we have a lost time injury or a rash of lost time injuries. If you don't have a program set up, go ahead and get started on that, and we have some resources here as well that we can help you with getting a return to work program into place. Again, you want to make sure you include all levels of management when you're setting up the program, but you got to have the buy-in from the very top. Encourage employees' involvement. Again, that's going to help you get the buy-in from the employee. Involve your medical provider. Maintain consistency with the program. Very important. You've got to apply this program to everybody consistently across the board. And with any type of written safety or compliance program or whatever program you have, you want to review the program on a regular basis because you're going to have to make changes. It's kind of a living, breathing program, so you're going to have to make changes as it moves forward. One of the things that we have available to all of our members here at ALICOMP is our safety library. There are a lot of tools available to you in the safety library that hopefully can help you with your safety program, to help you train or keep the awareness level up with your employees related to certain hazards that maybe you won't need to use the light duty program that you've implemented. Our safety library contains over 9,000 written safety and compliance related documents. That goes from OSHA compliance programs to written safety programs, policies, procedures. There are PowerPoints, training handouts, quizzes. There are forms and documents for record keeping, and there's a safety manager program on there that's a free download from the safety library that operates in Microsoft Access that goes into more things than I could name on this webinar. But it does, just to hit the high points, tracks employee injuries, keeps up with training, reminds you when employees have training that's coming due. It'll only spit out what you put in, but if you keep up with your employees' injury and incident information in there, it will automatically populate your 300 log for you. When it's time to post your summary on February 1st, you can click on 300A and it'll automatically populate that for you. So there's a lot of tools on there. If you don't have a username and password for this, they're free for our customers. My email address is here on the screen. Shoot me an email, scott@alicompins.com, and I can help you get set up with a username and password so that you can access our safety library. Again, just one of the tools that we have available, some of the resources that we have available for our members to help you prevent accidents and injuries. Again, we'll go to the question and answer portion now. If there are any questions about modified duty or return to work programs or questions about getting set up on the safety library, we'll take those at this time.
As Scott said, we would now like to take your questions. If you would like to ask a question over the phone, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. As a reminder, you may also ask a question via your web console. Locate the Q&A panel in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, type your question in the open area, and click Send.
And again, that is star 1 to ask a question over the phone. And operator, do we have any questions over the phone?
And I'm showing no questions over the phone lines.
And I'm showing no questions over the web. Okay, and does anyone have any closing remarks?
Nope. I think we're good.
Okay, well, thank you for your participation. This concludes today's conference call. You may now disconnect.